So you've got a family with 3 or more children and a small SUV just isn't going to cut it. Do you go and get a large SUV in the vain hope that you might go off-roading once a year? Or do you have a look at something that is specifically designed to carry large numbers of people in comfort? Then you might want to have a look at the Kia Carnival. This is the 4th generation of the Kia Carnival. It has taken on more of an SUV look. It looks quite similar to the Sorento, especially with this new front grille and these aggressive front LED headlights. I think they look really, really good. This platinum level car comes with black gloss 19-inch alloys as standard, and this hard to describe colour is called Astra Blue. The fresh design continues at the back with these new LEDs, which I can just imagine somebody in the Kia design studio drawing a pencil-thin red line and thinking, they're never going to make this, but I'm going to include it anyway. Well done to Kia. They have included some of the best-looking taillights in the business. Under the tailgate, we get a massive amount of storage space with a nice deep boot. It's 627 litres when you've got all 3 rows of seats up, and that's expandable to 2,461 if you fold the rear seats down. Another nice little design touch I like on this car is just this textured pattern here on the C-pillar. It just sort of breaks the side up a bit and gives it more of an SUV sort of look. This Carnival is powered by a 4-cylinder 2.151 litre diesel engine. Now, I suppose that technically makes it closer to a 2.2 than a 2.1, but we're splitting hairs. Power output is 140 kilowatts and there's 440 newton meters of torque. Fuel efficient as well at just 6.5 litres per 100 kilometres. There is also a 3.5 litre 6-cylinder petrol-powered engine, but that is not as fuel efficient, although it is a little more powerful. Personally, I'd go for the diesel. With this mix of light and dark on the interior, it's taken me a few days to work out what it reminds me of, but it's just hit me. Cadbury Top Deck chocolate. But it works really well, and Top Deck chocolate's pretty good too. From the driver's seat, you feel like you could be flying a plane or captaining a ship. It's a very high, commanding, armchair-like position that's actually pretty comfortable, and there's just such a huge number of buttons and switches. It feels like you're flying the Starship Enterprise. The 12.3-inch center console screen runs the latest and greatest Kia software. It looks really good, it's razor sharp, has great graphics. The sound system is a 12-speaker Bose unit, which just sounds okay. The native navigation system works pretty well, although it is very chatty and will verbally alert you to just about every single school zone and red light and speed camera within a 50-kilometre radius of where you are, seemingly, because it goes off all the time, even when there's neither of those things nearby. There's Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, although they are not wireless, and CarPlay just runs on sort of half the screen, so it takes on that smaller format look. But the advantage of doing that means that you can actually run 2 apps at the same time. So you can have CarPlay on one side of the screen and a native app running on the other. So you can have 2 lots of maps, or maps on one side and music on the other. It's actually pretty clever. 3-zone climate control can either be operated from the switches and haptic touch buttons down here, or you can also run some functions on the screen as well. Then we have 3 USBs up here in the center, 2 for charging and 1 as the input for the sound system. Some wireless phone charging next to that, and a handy storage tray with a couple of cup holders, a beautiful looking rotary dial to change gears, and I've actually become a big fan of these. This one actually works really nicely with a big park button in the middle there. Auto hold for the brakes and the drive mode selector plus the park brake. Then we have another row of buttons down here for the parking cameras and the proximity sensors and the heated steering wheel controls, and the front 2 seats are heated and cooled, and they're controlled from these 2 switches here. Underneath the armrest, which has some very nice stitching on it, is a quite big storage bin. There's a good amount of space in here and a couple more cup holders either for the front passengers or the back seat. No head-up display on this car, which I think is a bit of an omission, and also no digital instrument cluster. We've got a hybrid digital analog unit with a small screen in between. It almost feels like the analog dials are somewhat redundant because I honestly barely look at them at all. The steering wheel is a pretty standard Kia unit with a couple of paddles behind it to change gears, although I don't know why you'd really need to in a car like this. And there's a few buttons down here on the right which control the powered opening and closing of the sliding doors and also the rear tailgate. This car doesn't actually have any leather in it. It has fake leather called Premium. which actually feels really nice. It's hard to tell the difference. The only thing is the bottom cushion is lacking a little bit in support for somebody as tall as me. I feel like I could do with a bit more support underneath my knees. I have a slight falling forward sensation in this car sometimes. But the lumbar support is some of the best I've felt, and there's also full 12-way electric adjustment for the driver and the front passenger. In the back seat, and as you'd expect for a people mover, there is loads of room. I'm nowhere near my own seating position. I'm 190 centimeters tall and plenty of knee room. Not a lot of toe room though, I have to say. There's a second sunroof up above me, and that does not eat into my headroom at all, which is great. Seating position, very relaxed and laid back. I'd have a recliner seat just a little bit. Feels like I could have a nap, to be honest. There's a little armrest here, which is just maybe just a little bit too short for my long arms, and there's no armrest on the left-hand side, but there is plenty of room for 3 people across here quite easily. And I've just noticed that there is an additional climate control unit up here on the ceiling for the rear passengers to operate. Rear climate can also be operated from the front. There are 4 rear air vents, 2 in the second row and 2 in the third row. 2 USBs, and they're behind the driver's seat and the front passenger seat, and the front passenger seat can be moved from the back seat with these buttons just here on the side. And there are also 6 ISOFIX points in the second row, 2 for each seat, and then in the third row there's 4 more. So in theory you could have up to 5 baby capsules in here. Imagine the noise. Now it's important to remember that the Kia Carnival is a minivan and not a bus, because there is a third row of seating, but it's probably better designed towards shorter people or children, because for me at 190 centimeters, I can't quite get my head in. It's a little bit of a squash, but there is plenty of leg room. I'm not complaining about that at all. There's a couple of cup holders, a shade here, and there's also shades on the second row seats as well. And there's also USB charging back here, one on the right-hand side and another one over there on the left. So not ideal for tall adults, but for kids and shorter people, yeah, the third row is quite doable. The Kia Carnival does everything that it's supposed to do very well, except for one major exception, and that's how it drives, which is, to be honest, pretty average. But I think that actually has nothing to do with the Carnival itself and more to do with the category it's in. Vans are just not great to drive. They are dynamically pretty horrible, and unfortunately that's the same story here. SUVs are becoming more and more like cars to drive, but the same cannot be said for minivans. They feel big, they are big. The suspension's actually pretty good. Because it's tuned here in Australia for our less than perfect roads, I'm not feeling a lot of bumps. And where some large vehicles can feel small when you drive them, that's really not the case here. This kind of feels quite truck-like, and with the diesel engine, it sounds it too. And look, all of that's fine if you're used to driving vans, then this is a really good van. But to me, it feels like something I would rent on holidays. It's just not something I feel really comfortable behind the wheel of as a daily driver. Another function to further prove how this car is a little bit aeroplane-like is the ability to talk to the passengers in the back over the PA system. Now children, this is your captain speaking. No more fighting. Please maintain a social distance of 1.5 meters. Thank you. Oh yes, going around roundabouts in the suburbs. You're not going around them so much as partially going over them. The other thing you notice driving around town, especially on the freeway, is when you're merging and changing lanes, people get out of your way and they let you in. You don't get that in a Kia Picanto. But it's the steering that I really don't like the most on this car. It just feels quite lifeless and disconnected to the road. Put it into sport mode and that does improve a little bit. It adds a little bit of extra steering feel, but I don't know, it's still not great. Now yes, this is quite a large car indeed, the largest one I've reviewed, and I know this because I have to spend about 2 or 3 minutes trying to just reverse it into my tiny garage. But to make it easier, the car is covered in cameras and sensors which all pop up with alerts and make noises, and you can see every angle possible on the center console screen while you're backing up, which would make it nigh on impossible if that wasn't the case. So Kia have got you covered there. Kia Kia's autonomous emergency braking system is really good. In fact, it's probably just a little bit too good, because on a couple of instances, and this has happened in a couple of the Kias I've had, including the Stinger, where I have been heading towards an intersection and the system has freaked out, evidently for whatever reason, I don't know, and has suddenly slammed the brakes on, which, apart from giving me a mild heart attack, is actually just a little bit dangerous. At $70,490, the Kia Carnival Premium is about the best way there is to get a large number of people around town. It's fantastic value for money and it's really well built and designed. There is a bit of a feeling that Kia are on the rise at the moment, and having driven a number of their cars just lately, like the Seltos, the Sorento, the Picanto, the Stinger, and this one, I can tell you the more established players like Toyota, Mazda and Hyundai might have something to worry about.